My name is Dr. Allyson Ocean. I am a medical oncologist specializing in pancreatic cancer and a co-founder of Let's Win Pancreatic Cancer. Just as it is with other cancers, research demonstrates that pancreatic cancer is much more prevalent in African Americans than whites. In fact, the pancreatic cancer incidence rate for African Americans is the highest of any racial or ethnic group, up to 67% higher, according to the National Cancer Institute. The incidence rate, defined as the number of people affected by a disease per 100,000 individuals, makes African American heritage a standalone risk factor for developing pancreatic cancer. Research also shows that negative social determinants of health, such as food insecurity, high unemployment, housing insufficiency, lack of access to doctors, and routine screenings, among others, all contribute negatively and disproportionately among the poor and African American and other minority racial and ethnic groups. These social determinants of health also have a negative effect on those diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Because of this, the Elvin Howard Sr. Pancreatic Cancer Advocacy Foundation's vision in its pathway to a cure is that social determinants of health will never be an obstacle to preventing, diagnosing, treating, and curing pancreatic cancer and any chronic health condition. Most times when pancreatic cancer is diagnosed, it's already in the late stages of the disease process. Early detection is one of the keys to successfully beating pancreatic cancer. We need more minority representation in all facets of decision-making as it relates to pancreatic cancer. We especially need more minority participation in public policy development and clinical research trials. Most clinical trials are not representative of the general population or of those with a particular disease, especially in pancreatic cancer. Clinical trials primarily enroll white, male patients with consistent underrepresentation of women, the elderly, and people of color, especially Black and Hispanic patients. While people of color make up about 39% of the U.S. population, these groups represent only 2 to 16% of patients in trials. How can we change this? One way to increase clinical trial access to African Americans is to use patient registry datasets as the basis for trials. The way trials are conducted today tend to be finite. Patients are recruited from scratch, are induced to participate, the trial is conducted, and then the trial ends. Disease registries, which are often managed by independent disease foundations, are fundamentally different. Registries are longitudinal in nature, can aggregate broad and deep real-world data, including a wealth of personal and demographic data such as race and ethnicity, as well as clinical data, genomic information, and biological samples. Importantly, when done right, through multiple interactions with patients over time, and by providing participants with value by sharing data and insights, registries engage patients, establish relationships, and build trust. By tapping robust registries as the source of patients for trials, researchers can define precise participation criteria and can identify patient segments and subsegments that match these criteria. In this way, researchers can avoid many of the problems that plague clinical trial recruitment and can access representative patient populations. It is important to go beyond traditional academic medical centers to access patients. The ability to recruit diverse patient populations has been limited because the source of patients in trials has been largely confined to academic medical centers. More diverse patient populations can be engaged by expanding where and how patients are recruited for registries and trials. Organizations that conduct trials need to go where the patients are. This means thinking broadly and creatively about all possible channels for recruiting patients, both within and outside of healthcare, and formulating a strategy most appropriate for your disease and patient population, and in this case, pancreatic cancer. In addition to going to academic medical centers, other considerations should be health systems. Health systems have access to large numbers of patients and typically have good data about patients' disease state, clinical history, gender, ethnicity, and more. For example, Ochsner Health, the largest system in Louisiana, cares for about 1 million individuals, encompassing a diverse population. Ochsner is building community health centers in disadvantaged neighborhoods and has established a clinical research arm. With a strong presence in Cancer Alley, the stretch along the Mississippi River between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, with dozens of petrochemical plants and high rates of cancer, Ochsner represents a potential partner for researchers interested in enrolling this system's diverse patients. Another example is a partnership between advocacy organizations such as the Elvin Howard Pancreatic Cancer Advocacy Foundation and others such as the Veterans Administration. The Veterans Administration is America's largest integrated healthcare system. The VA has large numbers of patients and has one of the country's best electronic health records systems. Used by all of the VA's 1,700 hospitals and clinics, it collects and stores consistent longitudinal data on more than 23 million patients who have received care from the VA. We can also access community networks. These are grassroots networks that use creative approaches to engage and enroll patients. For example, organizations that work with thousands of churches, which are vital trust brokers in underserved communities of color, can help recruit diverse patients for registries and trials. We can also go from direct to consumer. This involves going to patients directly, using modern consumer marketing approaches and social media to reach and engage patients. In this area of precision medicine, the key to accelerating cures is data. But without data that is representative of all patients with a disease, researchers won't be able to determine which segments and subsegments of patients are helped most by a treatment. Representative patient data and the insights from this data are essential in ensuring that no patients are left behind in efforts to cure pancreatic cancer. Health inequality leads to human suffering and unfair disadvantages for achieving good health. It also increases financial costs. It's time to come together and build a health experience that reflects the communities of our consumers and overcomes barriers to care. I wholeheartedly support the work of the Elvin Howard Sr. Pancreatic Cancer Advocacy Foundation in that we both are seeking better outcomes for all people, regardless of who they are and where they have come from. Thank you for your support.